Good morning. Thank you for being here this morning. I cannot tell you how excited I am for this morning. As I looked at the RSVPs and as I look out at the room today at all the partners and opportunity, I can't help but think how many, both by individuals and organizations in this room, how many lives have been changed in this community because of the efforts of this room. So not to applaud yourself, but would you give each other an applause and congratulate each other for that? I hope that the title of Tapping the Talents of Unique Populations was intriguing to you, and I hope that by the end of today's session that you go away encouraged, excited, interested. I know many of you are in that space, but that's what we want to focus on today. My career unknowingly gravitated to that, of serving people with great barriers. I began my entire career has been here in Los Angeles in broadcast management. During that time, I produced a special on Special Olympic Summer Games at UCLA with Rayford Johnson and everyone, and it won an Emmy. Now, I say that not to say that it had anything to do with my production capabilities. It was so compelling, so amazing, the testimonies were so remarkable that it should have been in its own category. But I quickly saw the opportunity for community to come together and to serve people with intellectual disabilities, serve people with barriers. I ended up being on the board of Special Olympics Southern California, and while I was at CBS 2 and KCAL Channel 9, I was chairman of the board of Special Olympics Southern California and was asked by Tim Shriver, the chairman of Special Olympics International, Maria Shriver's brother, the founder, Eunice Kennedy Shriver's son, if Southern California, if Los Angeles would be interested in bidding for the World Games. The Special Olympics World Games have become a major international event, having been in Dublin, in Shanghai, in Athens, Greece, thousands of athletes, 25 different sports, and so reached out to Mayor Villaraigosa at the time, and we put together a bid committee, and Bill Allen, and there's a lot of people in this room that I could name that was a part of the effort. But we won that bid, and we won the bid. They asked if I would serve as CEO for 5 years. And so I did. I thought at that moment it was a coming together of my sports marketing experience and television experience, my philanthropic interests, and it was personal for me. My daughter Kelly is 30 years old and has cerebral palsy. So advocating for her entire life. All of a sudden, that was all coming together with this opportunity to put on the World Games. So we started from scratch and built a team of about 400 people. And the reason I'm telling you about the World Games is an amazing, incredible celebration of community, of the power of community, of the power of partnerships and what we can do as a community, particularly in Los Angeles, the resources that we have and the capabilities that we have to serve those who need to be served. The Games were remarkable. We had over 6,000 athletes from 164 countries, people with intellectual disabilities, 3,000 coaches from those countries. We had 9,000 uniformed and trained volunteers. We had the opportunity for fans in the stands, 25 sports over 10 days, and we didn't charge tickets. It was all volunteers to fill 25 venues for 10 straight days. So we had a Fans in the Stands program where you could go online, you could sign up to be a team leader for Fans in the Stands, and all that was saying was that you were willing to bring 10 or more people from your church, from your community, from your neighborhood, from your family to come, and I'll sign up for Wednesday afternoon for badminton, and I'll be there, or for swimming on Tuesday morning. That resulted in over 5,000 people signing up to be team leaders, and it resulted in 112,000 registered fans in the stands. The corporate community came out incredibly, many of them here today, from Bank of America and Deloitte and Toyota, and I'm going to get in trouble by starting naming names, but Kaiser and everybody who came together was remarkable in their effort, engaging. They're volunteers, and if you ever participate in Special Olympics, you know that you get out there and say, I'm here to help the athletes, and you leave by the end of the day going, okay, who's helping who here? I just got a dose of perspective. Am I making the most out of my life? What do I have to? We learned a lot more from them than they taught us. So the purpose of the World Games was awareness that leads to acceptance and inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities, and believing that the end result was that as you accepted and included, accepting them for who they are and then meaningfully including them in your life, that would lead to acceptance and inclusion of all people of diversity. So it became a real celebration of diversity, of overcoming adversity as we put on the World Games. But we quickly found out that as important as it was to those athletes and what it meant to their lives, to their families' lives, what it meant to the volunteers and the coaches, the people in the stands, that as important as that was in transforming their lives, those 6,000 athletes represented 200 million people around the world with intellectual disabilities. And that the greatest thing that we could do is change the hearts and minds of us without intellectual disabilities, so that kids would befriend them in school, so that employers would hire them for jobs. Wink, wink. That became the real purpose, is getting their stories in front of as many eyeballs as possible. ESPN signed on as the official broadcast partner. Opening ceremony at the Coliseum, a parade of athletes, place packed, was aired in 170 countries by ESPN. One friend who took his mom there, his mom was a longtime retired special ed teacher. He said that she sat there with tears streaming down her face, and she turned to him and said, "They're doing this for people with intellectual disabilities? This is remarkable." And that's the power that we could have as a community. Host towns, all from San Diego to San Luis Obispo, 85 host towns opening their doors, opening their arms to welcome the teams from around the world. So why am I telling you that story? Because I like to. Because it was a remarkable moment. For many people, it was a life-changing moment. For our community, I think it was a moment that said, look what we can accomplish. As we look to 2028 now and the Olympics, if the community does anything like they did for the World Games today, we keep talking about the 84 Olympics. That was a long time ago. But just in 2015, what this community did to come together is particularly with the Paralympics now, what an incredible opportunity for this community to come together again. So when the games were over, I thought I was heading back to broadcast and was having nice, productive conversations, and I thought for sure this was just a 5-year thing that I was doing. And then out of the blue, Korn Ferry reached out, and somebody had recommended me for the job of President and CEO of Goodwill Southern California. And I have to be honest, like many of you and many in our community, I knew that Goodwill was a great place to get rid of your stuff. I knew that it was a great place to donate. It was a great place to shop if you couldn't afford, thinking at the time that if you couldn't afford to shop at Macy's or Nordstrom, it was a great place to shop. Believe me, it's a great place to shop no matter what you do. So I started looking into Goodwill quickly and discovered, first of all, that the theme line, tagline was transforming lives through the power of work. And that all of the stores, Goodwill Southern California, founded 100 years ago, this last December, on Olvera Street and the Plaza. I mean, uniquely Los Angeles. That for those 100 years, the purpose, the reason why the Goodwill existed was to transform lives through the power of the work. And so today, we have 83 stores and growing. We just opened stores in Van Nuys and Pacoima, places that need stores. You'll see families, outfitting their entire family for not much money. Even at our clearance centers, you can buy clothes at $1.99 a pound, even. And then all the donations that come in, all of that to serve people through the power of work. Directly, we have some 3,000 employees. And then indirectly, all the profits from our stores and our efforts go to serve our Simon and his team through our career and workforce development teams. A team that this last year placed nearly 5,000 people in jobs. And it's a team that Simon enjoys the opportunity, not just people with barriers, but he wants the homeless veteran with a drug addiction and a disability, that believing that we can serve if there's a willingness to work. So it's an incredible story. I think one of the great untold stories of Los Angeles. So if all of that, and by the way, I also discovered that we're good for the earth. If you visited one of our warehouses or visited many of our stores, you'd say, God, we have way too much stuff as a society. Where does all that stuff go? It's a ridiculous number, but in 2016, over 100 million pounds of reusable goods were kept out of landfills going through our process of our 83 stores and operations. So, yeah. So if that wasn't inspiring enough for me to take this job and the opportunity that I saw of what we could do as a community, they shipped me off the first week to Omaha, Nebraska. And it was the gathering of CEOs and chairs of the board from across the country. There's 162 Goodwills across the country. We happen to be the largest region. Especially Southern California, by the way, is a little misnomer. Orange County and San Diego split off many years ago, and our boundaries are LA County, Riverside, and San Bernardino County. So all those stores are within those boundaries. But I went to this conference, and the last night was the Shining Stars evening. It was to honor two people that their lives had been changed, their lives had been transformed. And by the way, what an incredible word that is, transform. Transforming lives through the power of work. Go from here to here, to go from hopeless to hopeful. And I saw that that night. And although they weren't stories that happen in this community, every one of us could stand up and tell stories, and you'll hear one in just a minute with Simon and a special guest here locally. But the first video played, and it was a dad who had 5 kids. He worked in a sales job during the day, and at night he sold drugs. He grew up believing that that was the way that he could provide for his family. And then he tells the story about how he, when he was arrested that fateful night, that the arresting officer said, "Your life will never be the same." And he went away to prison. And then he tells the story about how, while in prison, his 2 boys, who played on different high school teams, played for the city championship in football. 35 points were scored in that game, and all 35 points were scored by one of his 2 boys. And the things that he was missing being in prison, and he committed himself to turn things around when he got out. Easier said than done. When he got out, he went on 25 different interviews, and nobody would talk to him. He felt like he had convict tattooed to his forehead. Then he visited the local Goodwill, where he was welcomed with open arms, became a store associate, was encouraged to treat people with respect, work hard, do the best that you can, and good things will happen. Today, he's managing 5 stores in that region. The video ends with that, and 400 of us could not get up fast enough in applause and standing ovation as he's introduced and he comes up to the stage. And he gets up there, and he is just so appreciative. He thanks the people that had changed his life, and then he asks his wife to stand up that was sitting in the middle of the room. And she stands, and he says, as my wife would often say, if not for Goodwill, we would not have a family. And so, amazing story. Then the next video plays, and it's about a young mom with a young baby in an abusive marriage. And she escapes that marriage and goes to another state where she only knows one person. And she can't stay in that apartment, but they say you can sleep in our car. And so she does that for a month. But each day they would take the car to work, and she would wander the streets looking for work. Then she got housing, low-income housing in the area. And across the street was a Goodwill Career Resource Center. And she went in looking for help, and they said, well, let's do an aptitude test. And they revealed to her that you have an aptitude for math and science. And she was like, me? Math and science? There's no way. Well, she applied for they thought that she'd be good for our Certified Nurses Assistant program. So put her with the local junior college. And the video showing her studying and getting things back on track. And then the last image is of her in her outfit taking the blood pressure of a patient. And again, standing ovation. We couldn't get up soon enough. She gets up there, and she is just shaking with appreciation and joy. And she says, imagine me. I could not care for my family, and today I'm caring for other people. I'm caring for people's health. Fast forward, found out just 2 months ago that today she's a registered nurse making $96,000 a year. Yeah. So So as I said, those stories, many of you could stand up and give similar stories. My desire and our desire for doing this convening, for talking about those unique populations and what we can do in this community, is that we create more and more and more stories like the two I just told. We so appreciate you being here this morning. Again, I hope that it's thought-provoking for you today, and we stand ready. Goodwill stands ready to partner. We have a lot of partners in the room, I know, a lot of great relationships. We want to expand those partnerships, and we stand ready and willing to have any conversation about any partnership we can have to that end. So thank you for being here. Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to take a few minutes, not yet, don't get up, in a bit to sort of rearrange the stage and allow you all to network and have coffee. I mean, that's part of what we're hoping to do here is to connect partners and stakeholders and committed organizations to each other. But let's see, Bobby should be in the room. Come on up, Bobby. But first, we'd like to share one of the stories of an individual that we met through one of our projects. And I'll give a little shout out to the City Economic and Workforce Development Department here and Lisa with the Mayor's Office. And also Ashley from Redif is in the room. So there's a project called LA Rise, and many of you are familiar with that project. And it's a project that engages primarily the homeless and the reentry community to sort of address their personal and social needs, enroll in some short-term training, and then work with a transitional employer. And then that sort of allows the individual to get back in the habit of work, put some money in their pocket, and extend that time that they have to stabilize and plan for a longer-term career. So we're seeing incredible outcomes. But what we did is we worked with the city to sort of test out a different initiative, and we called it the Skid Row Project, because it was sort of an LA Rise version on Skid Row with those participants. And you guys know historically, we've tried to do employment programs in Skid Row, some with success, others not as much. So we enrolled 50 participants. We trained 31, and 26 we put to work of individuals that were on Skid Row, which historically people have said, why even bother? It's about emergency services. There's no way we're going to be able to put people to work that can contribute in a fairly reasonable amount of time. So, we have to thank the city for being thoughtful and creative and sort of take a little bit of a risk on a different kind of project. So, we want to take a minute to thank you all for that, because that's really sort of opening doors for us and a lot of the individuals that we're serving. And so that's how we connected with Bobby. Bobby was on Skid Row, and the way that we wanted to run that program was not to have people come into our office, but to deploy a team of community outreach workers that knew Skid Row. And Bobby lived on Skid Row and is really an incredible example, so much so that we could have helped him to move on to a different kind of career, but we saw the value in that, and we knew we needed Bobby on our team. So rather than place him somewhere else, we brought him onto our team. So Bobby, why don't you come on up, and we're going to do a little Q&A over here with Bobby. So help me welcome Bobby to the stage. So Bobby, tell us a little bit about where you were when we met you and a little bit about your background.
Well, actually where I was in Skid Row, part of my neighborhood where I grew up at, because it was where I've been for 35 years of my life. My background, basically how I ended up in Skid Row, was due to the fact of having a large family I came out of. I was the oldest of 8. And not having enough room in the house facility that we lived in, the county ended up separating 2 of us in our family. So we ended up in foster homes. Due to the fact that I ended up in a foster home, I ended up going to different foster facilities, which basically they move us around. And from there, they lost my credits. In other words, saying about 18 years of my age, I got emancipated. And once I got emancipated, I went back to look for my credits, but due to the fact that all of our credits through the system was lost in this school or that school, they didn't have it. So I was emancipated, ended up on the streets, 18 years old, 17 years old, looking for work, couldn't find work due to the fact that couldn't find apartment due to the fact that didn't have a job or any kind of high school papers. And I ended up in Skid Row. So Skid Row basically raised me, I'm sorry to tell you. 35 years of my life, I've seen every mission. I've been a part of every mission. I ate. Make sure y'all eat your food today. Don't throw nothing away, because we got people that will eat. So I'm sorry to tell you, but I'm down to earth. I'm thanking God so much for every one of you. Every one of you play a part in my life, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here, you know. So I thank God for everyone here. But my point is that being in Skid Row for 35 years of my life was interesting, because I've seen people go back and forth to jail, move out of town, come back. I've seen people move and get their place, end up coming back. I watched so much happen in 35 years of my life. And no one has come into Skid Row to give any of us a job. I mean, they all come bringing us food and clothing and all kind of et cetera, which we became a place where you have a lot of stuff on the ground. You know, paper plates, paper cups. Now you got people really working hard just to clean Skid Row. But I say, don't bring too much more, because just bring it to Goodwill, okay? So, yes. Because we'll make it work instead of throw it away. So they didn't throw me away, and they needed somebody in the community to find individuals jobs that can talk to individuals. And I deal with all different type of personalities, and it was really, you know, a higher source that I can tell you about the eye of Goodwill, because that face goes a long ways for 100 years. And the face is invisible, but that face got me here due to the fact that Goodwill has given me opportunity to be here, and I'm kind of like nervous. Y'all forgive me, because I can't believe I'm up here like this, but I know who's got me here, and it's every one of y'all prayer that's got me here also.
Well, you know, and I have to say that, you know, we're really the lucky ones, and I think the employers in the room, the message that we're trying to send is that, you know, all employers, including us, can end up with someone like Bobby, who is just passionate and committed and brings so much to the table. And Bobby has a standard response. I mean, and anyone in the room, I'll just tell you now, if you haven't spoken to Bobby yet, you ask him in the morning, how you doing, Bobby? And he says, you know how I'm doing. But we still ask every day because of the energy that comes out of that. And so the value of some of those participants and some of those individuals living on Skid Row that is unseen, and as we're talking about today, untapped. And Bobby is the perfect example of that talent that is out there, and we need that talent. So Bobby, you know, what's the experience now? Now you're with Goodwill, and you're our one of our liaisons out on Skid Row and working with this population. So what are you seeing now?
I'm seeing that I love everybody here. Patrick, you, everybody here. All y'all know, I don't know them by name, but I'm just letting you know I love every one of you. If I could reach out, like you said, somebody said we give hugs. Okay, that's a big hug, y'all. Okay. But just to let you know that now that I'm in Skid Row, I've been there now, working in the community of Skid Row, getting people jobs. We got the 50 people which they asked for. I was able to go out and talk to people that had disabilities. My job is to find them with they have to have their Social Security card and their ID, which, you know, that's kind of hard to get in Skid Row, because some of them get robbed, they got stolen, or they lost. So a lot of them are new people with whatever. So I was able to go out and I know who's new, who's old, who's come back, because after so many years, of 35 years, you know who's old and who's new, et cetera. And the new ones, we got to get them before they get out there after so long. So basically, I went out there and found the ones that were new that was coming, and the ones that did have ID. And actually, we got them jobs, and they've been working in the stores, and they're working in retail, and they're working in the warehouses. And the thing is that they're coming back to me thanking me, and the word is getting out into Skid Row. One thing I found out, that I do have a gift of gab. I thought it was a disability, but it's not. So when I'm out there with everybody, I do talk, and I do let them know, and they say, Bobby do get the job done. He talks and get it done. So a lot of people are working due to the fact of every last one of y'all been helping me with my disability. And I thank God for you, because God knows I wouldn't have never been able to have people come up to me, and it's like, all of y'all, once I get back to the office or get them out of Skid Row to the office, which is northeast Okay, Goodwill. So therefore, once I get into the office, they come in and they see Goodwill, and they see everybody at work, and they see everybody putting in the work, and all the programs that we have there, and they're coming in like loads, like Patrick said, and they're coming because they're seeing the good work that we're doing here. So out of Skid Row, they're seeing that there are people that are giving us jobs, and they're coming at me like crazy because I'm the only one in Skid Row. But once I get them here, they see all of y'all.
You're enough. You're like 4 people, Bobby. So.
Well. So therefore, I'm learning how to just shut it down the best way I know how. So I just want to say thank you, and I really thank God more than anything. Oh, and the thing that I really want to say is I appreciate you, I thank you, and I thank God for you. Thank you.
We get hugs, right?